Restoring the historic St. Benedict the Moor schoolhouse in St. Augustine has been the goal of two nuns at a local convent. They joke, as in the movie The Blues Brothers, that they are on a mission from God. I'm joined now by Jessica Clark, St. Augustine Bureau reporter and anchor at First Coast News, as well as all-around local history buff. Welcome, Jessica.
Good morning.
We also welcome from the Sisters of St. Joseph, Finance Director Frank Castillo, and Sister Kathleen Carr. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Finally, Thomas T.J. Jackson, a former student at St. Benedict the Moor School, who attended until it was integrated in the mid-'60s. Welcome, TJ.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
We're glad to have you. Sister Kathleen Carr, you and your compatriot leading the school restoration, Sister Stephanie Flynn, she was not able to be here today, but the two of you have really taken the lead on this project. Why did you decide to undertake it?
Well, for a very long time, they were trying to restore St. Benedict the Moor School. And then when the sisters recently, about 2 years ago, felt called to start a new mission, the big question was, where was this mission going to happen? It was a mission for young single mothers and their children. And it just so happened that St. Benedict the Moor came to us through the diocese, through the parish, and it needed a lot of love. It had been closed since 1964, and we really didn't know the condition of it until the doors were open and after we were committed to doing it. And 2 years later, right now, we're very excited about where it is now and all that will happen for the good of the people that we will be serving.
And describe what you saw when you opened the doors and looked inside for the first time.
I'm laughing because Jessica Clark's sitting next to me, and I think it was, oh my gosh, we were standing at the door looking down about 6 feet because there was no foundation in this old brick building, and there were trees growing in it. The roof had been removed, and it was just a big mess, but it was daunting. But we knew if God had invited us to do this, that we could do something about it.
I think the words, what have we gotten ourselves into, came out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Jessica, you've covered this story for a long time now. It's really been a great evolution to watch on television because you've done almost every step and every angle of this story. But how did you learn about it? And
Well, how did I learn about it? Well, the building had been sitting there for decades, right? And I had interviewed Thomas about how are they going to restore this building years before I ever met Sister Kathleen and Frank. And so in that way, there was this desire to take this literally crumbling building and do something with it. And when I don't even remember how I heard about it.
I think it might have been our mission advancement director contacted you
That's
at the
right.
time. Because
Yeah.
we knew about you.
And said, we're thinking about doing something with the building. The building is striking. If you're in Lincolnville, you know this building because it is tall. It was white at one point because of it just falling apart. It's now been painted. And it was being propped up with these giant beams. It looks like it's 3 stories tall. I think it's just really more like 2. Yeah.
but really tall.
Yes. And right across from St. Paul AME.
And so it had these long
Metal beams holding up the walls. Yeah. And so, when the sisters contacted me and told me, that's right, Frank, about what they were trying to do with it, well, then that was the next story for the books, right?
And TJ, that was a school that you actually attended. Tell us a little bit about what it was like when you were going there.
Yeah, well, I attended this school from kindergarten through 7th grade. And the 7th grade, it was 1964 when the Civil Rights Act was signed, and the bishop decided that it was going to integrate right away. Now, in the public school system, I think they gradually integrated through until 1970. So in 1964, the school was closed as a school, and the Catholics that went to the school attended the Cathedral Parish School, and the Protestants went to Excelsior School and Webster Elementary School. But going there at that time, you say it was a 2-story, but actually it was 3 stories.
Oh, it was 3 stories.
Yeah, the top floor was pretty much occupied by pigeons and storage and that kind of thing. But it was an area up on that third floor that it was could be occupied by certain items, you know. But the thing is, the school was a 3-room, pretty much. The first room was the kindergarten. The next room was the first, second, third, and fourth grade. Then the third room was the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So when you came in one door, you went around and came out the other door as a graduate from the 8th grade. And from there, at that time, if you wanted to continue your Catholic education for blacks, you went to St. Francis de Sales in Powhatan, Virginia.
Wow.
Or the males went to St. Emma Military Academy in Powhatan, Virginia.
Hmm.
So both of my sisters graduated ahead of me. They went to Virginia to continue the Catholic education at high school.
Frank Castillo, the sisters that ran this school at the time, for a while were actually breaking the law. They were teaching black students. That was outlawed. Explain a little bit about that history and what led to their being arrested.
Yeah, in 1913, the legislature passed unanimously a law that forbade a white teacher teaching black students. And from 1913 until 1916, the congregation continued to do that. And on Easter Sunday of 1916, 3 of our sisters were arrested for teaching the black students. What's fascinating about the whole thing is that from 1898, when that school was established, until 1964, it was a Catholic school, and yet from beginning to end, the vast majority of people who went to that school were non-Catholic.
Huh.
It was newly freed slaves who chose to send their students to that school because the congregation had a phenomenal reputation dating all the way back to France for teaching. And the amount of impact that they had, along with other groups in that community, created a scenario that within their first 25 years of teaching in that area, 50% of the African American population could read and write.
Wow.
So the impact's enormous, but for sure, the sisters continued to be dedicated to that in spite of what the law said. There was some anti-Catholic sentiment. There was obviously some anti-black sentiment that was in the area at the time. And yet the congregation continued to be very faithful in terms of making sure that they were teaching the people that were there and they were committed to them. At one point, the principal at the time, that was put under house arrest, would not put bail. She said, "I've done nothing wrong." In a very short period of time after that, the appellate court in the state of Florida said that private schools did not have to abide by that law. And that created a domino effect throughout the country, one that from 1916 until 1964, private schools were able to continue to teach black students in whatever way that they thought because of their religious affiliation.
Sister Kathleen Carr, that is a brave thing for those nuns to do, to keep teaching under arrest and threat of arrest. Would you say that that's unusual for the sisters in your orders, or is that something that is kind of a defining characteristic?
I think if you really knew us, it's not really unusual. That was rather courageous of them. And from my being in the religious community and looking at our history, we've had some very strong, courageous women leaders in the Catholic Church. And so that doesn't really surprise me.
Jessica, you've gotten to know these nuns pretty well over the course of your years of reporting now. Tell us a little bit about them and what strikes you.
They're spunky. Yes, they are. They are full of life and unstoppable. I heard this when I did the first couple of stories with them because I guess there were more naysayers than I knew. But what I kept hearing the sisters say is, that we're going to do this. We're going to make this happen. This is going to happen. And being kind of new, I grew up with a Protestant preacher as my father, so I didn't know a whole lot about Catholic sisters, but they are determined. And when they said they are going to do this, there, as you mentioned to me last week, there were some naysayers who said, we've tried to build this building or restore this building before, but and it just hasn't happened. But you have made it happen. How far away, Frank, are you from hitting your goal? Because they had to fundraise a lot and to make this happen. Thomas, you know they did because you had trouble getting the money, right?
Well, when we first started out, there was only so much you can raise bake sales and barbecues and those kind of things. But we raised enough just to be able to match grants to help preserve the building itself. But what the sisters did, kind of went way out beyond what we could do in a short period of time. And I'm real surprised and happy that it got to the point where it is now, because it looks a lot better. And a lot of people in the community that live around that area, they kept asking, well, the Catholic Church has so much money, why don't they just go ahead and do something? Mm-hmm. But it was not that easy, because there's so many needs in the community, in the Catholic community, that, it has to be prioritized. And that was one that was not really high on the list unless there was an end use for the building, and after it was restored. So that's what kind of was married with the need, and what was going to be done with the building after it's restored is what kind of catapulted it into a project that's doable.
Yeah, and I think a couple of things that I would add to that. We're very thankful for the committee that Thomas was a part of, because they helped protect that building so that we could then come now and help restore that. We've had not only naysayers, but people saying you could build a new building much cheaper than what it's costing.
What is it
right?
costing?
The rehab is costing approximately $3.5 million, right? And the question that we often get is, why are you committing that much money, that much time? And quite frankly, how have we been able to get foundations and thousands of individual donors to give to it? That building is the critical part of the history of St. Augustine. It's the critical part of Lincolnville, and it is the critical part of the African-American experience in Lincolnville. It was the lifeblood and the place where families chose to live, and it was very much the epicenter of that time. And for us, it's an important building to salvage, because we need history to remain there. It disappearing would not have been good for St. Augustine. It would not have been good for the history of African Americans, nor for the congregation or the diocese. And I'll add one additional thing. Many people say, well, the Catholic Church has a lot of money, the diocese has a lot of money. We really, other than the land, which the diocese has given to us at very reasonable terms, we have not gotten any money from anywhere else. It's really been individual donors, it has been family foundations, and the community rallying around a very important building that's critical for us to save.
Mm-hmm. And the having a mission at the end, driving this, as TJ says, is something that helped animate the fundraising and make sure that the project was on track. So, Sister Kathleen Carr, what is the mission that is attached to this building now?
The mission that's attached right now is for young single mothers and their children. They're going to have an opportunity to further their education or get education, and both professionally they can get jobs, and they'll be mentored with different businesses in town. And we're also going to be helping their children. We are going to have a center where they can bring their children, and hopefully many women will benefit from the program.
And may I add, it's working. It's already happening. There are 5 or 6 single mothers.
Even before the building?
Even before the building has been fully restored and open. The sisters are working with this handful of young women who have children. Their job skills were limited, which limited them in the ability to really get out of either a cycle of poverty or just not being able to give their children what they really wanted. And so one got enough money after learning a job skill and getting really good at it to get a car. That's big. Transportation is huge.
You've interviewed several of these women.
Yeah. And another one was able to get a house for her 3 children. And that's because they're learning job skills like nursing and accounting. And what are the others that
Yeah,
Okay.
culinary.
Culinary, right. And so to see this transformation, and it's so neat, isn't it, Sister Kathleen? It's the transformation of a building that you told me, and also of lives.
Right, because right now everything's happening on the campus, or the right where the Sisters of St. Joseph are. So they live and breathe all of the sisters around them. They join us for meals, and so they have a lot of opportunity to kind of rub shoulders with us and have conversations. And we know their children and are very invested in the lives of their little ones. And so it'll be different once they go over to St. Benedict's, because they won't be right among us all the time. But I think the sisters will be going over there and being among them.
And some of the things that you offer too, it's effective parenting skills,
Right.
development skills, helping them, free up time to get further their education.
That is correct.
Yeah. And Jessica, I want to talk to you a little bit about the transformation of the building, because, you've taken this great photography, drone shots of, what it looked like before, and then the whole evolution of it. How are they incorporating the new structure?
Oh,
into the
yeah,
old?
this is so neat. So basically, when you drive by or you go and walk up to the building, you're going to see the brick structure that was there in 1898 when it was built. And the contractors has had to build basically a new building within that that shell of the brick exterior walls. Because, well, for all kinds of technical reasons that we could go into. But for basically, they're building a new building within the old building. And then they're having to tie it together with these really long screws. I'm talking about like, a foot and a half,
Yep.
2 feet long. And so they're called Healy ties. You want to talk about that?
No, the Healy tie to me is very symbolic. I think it's really tying the old with the new. And I think that's kind of just bringing whole new life to the building. And I love the fact that the word Healy is in it, because I think there's been a lot that needs to be healed from the time the school closed to what this building is going to become. And I think it's going to bring healing to even the neighborhood of Lincolnville.
Well, what kind of healing do you envision, and what kind of healing do you think is necessary?
I think Thomas Jackson could maybe talk a little bit about it too, but I think a lot of it is, why did this black school have to close? And I'm someone who worked with the Haitian community in Miami for a number of years, and they were all black students. We had over 400 of them. So I kind of ponder in my mind, why did this school close? Which I don't really know, except it was that time of history.
Yeah.
And so I think, having that happen, Thomas was one who kind of bemoans the fact that he didn't get a 8th grade graduation
Certificate.
diploma, and his sister did, because you went to CPS, correct?
Well, I did. I
You went
got
over-
mine from.
You went over to CPS.
Excuse me. I got mine
Yeah.
from CPS.
Yeah. So
But,
maybe Thomas
yeah.
could talk a little bit about what healing might need to happen.
Well, it's. I guess I'm kind of at a loss for words, because at that time, there was a different environment. There was a different social dynamics going on, and there was in '64. There was demonstrations going on, and there was a request or a demand or an impetus to integrate, and that was the quote unquote thing to do, and the thing we wanted to have done. So that closing St. Benedict, moving the students over to Cathedral Parish, was kind of something that was at that time, that we wanted. Not looking at the total picture of, well, if you get what you want, you might lose what you have, kind of thing.
Right.
So, and then as time went on, that sentiment kind of creeped in that, well, why did you have to close St. Benedict? Because, we could have been just as good leaving it open.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back over the years that I was at St. Benedict, and I'll never forget the fact that we'd have, like in May, we have May Day and those kind of things. And we would go to the Mission of Nombre de Dios, and we would actually walk from St. Benedict down to San Marco Avenue.
And that's, for people who don't know, today it's marked by that large cross.
Got a large cross, yes, and that's where we would have, would walk from St. Benedict down to the Mission, and there would be buses that would come from Jacksonville, Gainesville, all over the diocese to the Mission, and the students from CPS, Cathedral Parish, and would walk down too. And we would all mingle with each other and just all come together. And then when the day was over, we'd get into our respective lines and walk back to our respective segregated schools. And it was like that was kind of a cathartic moment. I mean, that might not be the appropriate word, but it was kind of a way of letting us know that hey, we all are the same.
Because you were both black and white children all playing together.
Right.
Didn't matter.
Yeah.
And
right.
then at the end of the day, though,
we'll
get back into your lines.
Go back to our
segregation.
Separate. And Cathedral Parish and St. Agnes were two predominantly white schools. Well, actually all white. And St. Benedict was all black. But then while we were on the grounds of the mission, we were all the same.
That story, though, has happened obviously at a lot of schools around the country when integration happened, which is that the black students were often sent to the white schools, and then the community schools that the black students had been attending either, fell to disrepair or perhaps just weren't as vibrant and vital as they once were.
Right, correct. And when you think about how that happened, it was an objective or a goal of the civil rights movement was to integrate rather than just say, okay, we want to be on the same par, so to speak. Because a lot of the students got a good education, even though they didn't have the same resources. Got a great education. And of course, since we are in the middle of Black History Month, a lot of the history of Black history that we did get, we got in spite of resources that were available.
Jessica, that in some ways is a larger story of Lincolnville. I mean, we've seen it change so much. A historic black neighborhood located just south of St. Augustine, once a very vibrant center of black life, and now it's very different.
Very different. I think the black population of Lincolnville is a minority. It used to be almost
only about
all
7%.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the healing that needs to take place because the effect of integration essentially moved out a lot of the African American families that are there. And as I shared at the very beginning, if non-Catholic families were sending them to St. Benedict, then those families were not put in CPS because CPS only took the Catholic families. And so the non-Catholic families that had been the primary part of St. Benedict were found needing to find an alternative. And so that's part of the healing that I think the congregation is really wanting to bring.
And it's interesting. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say one thing you have to realize, too, that kindergarten was not a public school, was not offered by the public schools, but it was offered by the Catholic schools at St. Benedict. So we'd have a large kindergarten class of maybe 25 or 30 kids, but once you moved to the first grade, it went down to maybe 6 or 8 or 10. The rest of them went on to public school. But kindergarten was not offered by the public schools at that time.
Just very briefly, what is needed still to complete this project, Jess?
Yes, so we're looking at a shortfall right now, $250,000 on the 3.5, which is an amazing progress, but we are looking to close that shortfall. And hopefully in the summer, we'll have a dedication and a celebration when all that comes together.
Well, congratulations, Jessica Clark, Frank Castillo, Sister Kathleen Carr, and Thomas T.J. Jackson. Thank you for being here.
Thank
you for having us.
We could talk all day, couldn't we?
No kidding.
It's a story that must be told.
Thanks for being here.